Hello, Vigo County 4-H. On today's episode of Teaching Tabby Tuesdays, I'm going to be the teacher. Have you heard of the Little Critters Project? It's probably one of my favorite projects that we have at the fair. A little critter can be any small pet. It can be a bird, a rodent, a reptile, an amphibian, pretty much anything that's not a fish. I love little critters because I have a lot of little critters. So today I'm going to take you on a tour of all of the little critters that we have in our house. This is the largest tank that we have in our house. It's a 6-foot aquarium that we have set up as a terrarium. And in this terrarium we have Santa Isabella dart frogs. These dart frogs are native to the rainforests of Ecuador, and they can reach about 1 inch in length. We try and keep the tank around 75 degrees and about 75% humidity. The males of this species will call often, so we get to hear them sing all the time. And the females will lay the eggs on leaves, and the males that fertilize those eggs will guard those eggs until they turn into tadpoles. Once they've hatched into tadpoles, the males will pick them up and carry them down to the water source on their back. So you can see on this side of the tank, we have a water source, and that is for the males to deposit the tadpoles in and for the tadpoles to grow and develop. And on the other side of the tank, and that was one of the males calling, we have this small waterfall, and this waterfall acts as a filter. It draws water from the water source all the way to the far side of the tank, and in doing so it pulls it through the soil, which filters the water so that the water in the side where the tadpoles grow is nice and clean. We feed these guys a mix of pinhead crickets, which are very small, and fruit flies that are flightless, so we don't have to worry about them flying around the house. The lights are also set up on a timer, so they are on during the day and they go off at night to mimic a regular cycle. This is another terrarium that we have in our house, and in this one we keep our tiny dinosaurs. Just kidding. In this tank we have bronze mantellas. Bronze mantellas are a lot like dart frogs, but they're not from the rainforests in South America. They are from the rainforests and dry forests in Madagascar. And if you look closely in the middle, you can see a couple of these guys. They're out hunting. We just fed them some fruit flies, so they're out and about looking for some food. We try and keep this tank around 70 degrees with about 60 to 65% humidity. They also have a water source. It's down in the corner. You can't see it very well, but it has a pump and filter that filters the water, which helps keep all of the plants alive in the tank and helps keep the humidity up for these guys. They only get about 1 inch long, so they're also pretty small. And the males do sing very often. We have this set up in our living room and we get to hear them singing all the time. This is our smallest enclosure that we have here at the house. This is an ecosphere that normally lives on my desk in my office, but since we're all working from home, it's come home with me. Inside this little ecosphere, which is a completely enclosed ecosystem, we have Charlie B. shrimpin'. And Charlie is a volcano shrimp that's native to Hawaii. They can live upwards of 10 to 15 years, and I've had him for about 4 years. The green stuff in the tank is algae, and that's what he eats. It also produces oxygen, which helps to keep the tank surviving and, keeps oxygen in the water for him to breathe. If we zoom in here on the bottom a little bit, and I spin this, you should be able to see him moving around on the bottom. In this small terrarium, we have 2 spadefoot toads. These guys are native to North America, but they are subterranean, and they're actually not toads, they're frogs. So you can see they don't have a lot of decoration, they don't come up very often. We feed them small crickets, and at night, if we are lucky enough, we get to see them come out and soak in their little pool. But you can see down in this corner, and right by that rock, They have little holes that they've burrowed into the ground, and that is where they spend the majority of their time. We try and keep this tank very humid because they are subterranean and they are amphibians, so they do need a lot of moisture, and it stays at about room temperature, so right around 70 degrees. This is Ophelia the second. Some of you might have met the first Ophelia that I had. She was a rose hair. She passed away last year, but I did get a new spider. This tarantula is a curly hair tarantula, so also from South America, also very handleable, and she will be used for teaching purposes. She gets fed crickets about every other week. They don't eat a ton, but they do. If they get too many crickets, they will wrap them up in silk and kind of save them for later. The humidity is not super high in this tank, but we do try and increase it a little bit if we know she's getting ready to molt, because it'll make it easier on her. We also have 2 smaller tarantulas. This one is a pink toe, and you can see that she does have little pink toes. She is not very old, only a couple months, and she's in a very small container because it's easy to lose small spiders. So we keep them in small containers until they get a little bigger, and then she'll get an enclosure like our larger tarantula. The other one we have is a green bottle blue. This one's only about a month old. So she is still very, very small. She's in a much smaller container, and you can see she's got a lot of webbing that she built in there. Both of these smaller tarantulas also eat crickets. So we feed them about once a week since they're small and they're growing a lot quicker. And they'll do the same thing if you give them too many crickets. They will store them for later. In this enclosure, we have King Charles, and King Charles is a California king snake. He's about 4.5 feet long, and they're called king snakes because in the wild they eat other snakes, so they are the king of the snake. But in captivity, we don't feed him other snakes. He gets to eat mice, and we feed him those about once a week or once every other week. Sometimes if we try and feed him every week, he doesn't want to eat those because he's full still. But you can see he's over there by his water bowl. We try and keep fresh water in there for him. And behind that there's a heated rock, so if he gets too cold, he can go back and curl up on that rock. But we give him lots of things to crawl around and explore, and try and change his tank up just a little bit every time we clean it, so that he's got something new to look at. I use King Charles a lot when I'm teaching kids about reptiles. He's a little feisty. He's never bitten any kids, but he has bitten me a couple times. In this tank we have our hissing cockroaches, and you can see there's a dish of dog food in there. Cockroaches will eat just about anything, but dog food is a really good diet for them, so that's what we use. And a lot of times they are hiding underneath this. Sure enough, here they are, and let's see if we can get them to hiss for you. So that is a female. And this is our resident male, if I can get him out. He's kind of dug in there. But the males have horns on the top of their head. And that's how you can tell the difference between a male and a female, because you can see the female doesn't really have any horns, but he's got some pretty big horns. These guys are native to Madagascar. And lots of people think cockroaches are very dirty. These guys are actually, pretty clean and pretty hardy. They have an exoskeleton, so they're not like us. They don't have soft tissue on the outside. We try not to drop them, but every once in a while they get a little feisty and we lose control of them. In this cage we have James. James is a red-footed tortoise, and you can see him right down here in the middle. James is about 5 years old, and red-footed tortoises are native to the tropics and subtropics of South America. So not all tortoises live in deserts. Some of them live in the rainforest, so James likes it a little bit more humid than most tortoises. He gets fed a diet of fresh fruits and vegetables. He really likes lettuce and strawberries, but today he's got some blueberries in there. He's also a really big fan of eating dandelions and violets. This is his outdoor enclosure. He's got a little black hide box for him to go into if he wants some privacy. There's another smaller hide next to that he sometimes goes under, and then he has a fresh water bowl. We try and move this enclosure around outside about every week so that he gets some fresh grass to graze on, some new dandelions and violets to eat, and things like that. There's also a cover, you can kind of see it back there laying in the grass. And that cover covers half of the cage so that if he needs to get into some shade, he can if he wants to. Right now in the spring, James is kind of in between. So he's outside during the day when it's nice and warm and he can get some sunlight. And then in the evenings, he comes back inside into a smaller cage because he can't handle temperatures below about 45 degrees. So in the wintertime, this cage that's out here in the lawn gets moved inside, so he's got a nice big enclosure to roam around inside on. All right, these are our red-eared sliders. These guys are turtles. They are native to most of the United States or have been introduced into those areas. And these guys came to us through a rescue. They were used for an event, and the person who used them wasn't sure what to do with them afterwards and thought she could turn them loose, but once the turtle has been in captivity, they can't be let go. So these two guys, while they're native, we can't turn them loose because they won't know how to feed themselves. They won't know that they should be afraid of people. And they could carry diseases from the captive population into the wild, and we don't want that to happen. So we use these guys as teaching tools to let people know why you shouldn't bring turtles home, because they're happy in their native habitat and you could check them out and look at them, but once they've been fed by humans, they can't ever go back. So Don and Juan are in this tank outside. They've got lots of water to swim around in and a log to get up on bask on. If you've been to my office, you'll know that's where they normally live. They have a very large tank in there with lots of places to swim. They've got a floating log and a nice basking sunlight, but because we're all working from home, they've come home with me. So right now they're in the same boat as James. They get to be outside during the day when it's nice and warm and enjoy the sunshine, and then in the evenings we bring them back inside so they don't get too cold. Once the summer hits, they'll be able to stay outside full time. We feed these guys a mixed diet. They eat some greens, mostly lots of insects and other small arthropods, so they eat freeze-dried shrimp. And then we have turtle pellets that they really like, and every once in a while, as a special treat, we'll feed them goldfish. These are our 3 rats. The brown colored rat is Fernando. The white one with the tan face is Percy, and the white one with the brown face is Aureliano. These guys are all males. They're about a year old, and this is the tank or the enclosure that they live in. So you can see it's got multiple levels and some toys in there for them to play with. They're very active, mostly in the mornings and the evenings, but they're awake right now because they heard me rustle the treat bag, so everybody wants to see who's going to get a treat. Up in the top corner, you can see that there's a food bowl, so that's where we feed them, and then behind that there's a litter box. A lot of people don't know that rats are very clean and very intelligent, so they can be litter box trained. So we can let them out and run around the house, and if we leave the cage open and they have to go to the bathroom, they will go back in and use their litter box. There are some wood blocks hanging for them to chew on because rats' teeth continuously grow and they need to dull them down and make sure they don't get too long. Up in the other corner, you can see a little hide. That's where they sleep most of the time, and all 3 of them will go in there to sleep. They also have fresh water and other assorted toys and rope bridges and things to play on. Now, these guys used to have an exercise wheel, but they didn't ever use it. They just kind of drug it around the cage. So since they don't have an exercise wheel, we let them out once a day for about half an hour to run around the floor and play, so they kind of get free roam of the house, and they'll just run around and explore and check things out. And then after that, they'll come back to their cage for dinner time. And it's very interesting to note that if we're late on letting them out, they let us know. They're all getting a little crazy in the cage and watching us real closely to see when we're going to come and let them out. And because they're very intelligent, here in a minute we're going to see if we can get them to do some puzzles for us. All right, this is one of their favorite puzzles to solve, and underneath each one of these little plastic caps is a treat, and they have figured out that if they pick up the caps, they can find a treat. So let's see if Aureliano can find a treat. All right, and now we can try Percy. And Percy is actually blind, so sometimes it takes him a little while. If he flips it over, he might smell it better than he sees it, so you can see he's flipped over too, but he smelled the caps and he couldn't find the treat. So let's see, help him out a little bit. There we go. And then let's get Fernando out. He's pretty good at finding them. And he was the one who figured out how to find them first. He's probably going to go back and try and snag the second one. Oh, maybe not. Let's see, Aureliano's going to come back and see if he can find another one. All right, guys, that's about it for our tour. Some honorable mentions that we didn't show today were our goldfish, shrimp tank, and snail tank. If you're interested in learning more about the Little Critters Project, please just email me at carol@purdue.edu. I'd love to talk more about it with you and get you interested in the Little Critters Project. I hope to see you guys again next week. Bye!